Hello everyone, in this video we are going to discuss the 8th round of the Tata Steel Chess Rapid 2022. Total 10 players are playing this tournament. Nihal Sarin, Arjun Vidit, Gujarati, Sethu Raman, Gukesh, Hikaru Nakamura, Northern Abdustarov, Shakriya Mamidyarov, Wesley So, and Param Maksudlu. And we are going to discuss the 8th round of the rapid format Tata Steel Chess Rapid 2022. And we are basically going to cover two games in this video. One game is between Vidit versus Wesley So, because it is a very interesting game. And second, we are going to discuss the game between Arjun versus Hikaru Nakamura. Both the games are going to be very interesting and you guys are going to love it. So let's check it out. So in the first game, we are going to discuss between Vidit versus Wesley. And Vidit starts out the game with 1 e4. And Wesley replies with e5. Knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4. And here we have bishop to c5 by Wesley. And now there are many ways to continue the game. White can either castle, white can play c3, trying to play d4 ideas. White can even go for playing d3, even knight to c3 is a possibility, and stuff like that. But Vidit goes for something different and creative, I would say. b4, and he chose to play the advanced gambit on the 8th round against Wesley So. And this is the reason that actually makes this game interesting. Even in the top class, in the super GM levels, grandmasters are playing the gambits like advanced gambit. And the reason of playing this advanced gambit is white basically sacrifices a pawn to gain a good amount of development ideas. So after b4, Wesley decides to capture the pawn on b4, which is a fine move. And here we have c3 by Vidit. Like, this is the normal way to play the advanced gambit. If you guys are playing the advanced gambit, or you guys do know that how to play the advanced gambit, you must be well versed with the ideas, with the what are the ideas from the white side. And all those who don't know, you can check out on YouTube like how to play the advanced gambit. I would definitely recommend this particular gambit in the lower and in the club level players, because this gambit can actually give white a huge amount of development ideas in the exchange of one pawn. So if you like to play a very attacking chess, a very aggressive chess, you can definitely go for checking out this opening. So c3 hitting the bishop. And here we have bishop to a5, the main move. And here there are many moves to continue. White can play d4 or even a castle is a move. Here in the game, Vidit decides to go for d4. d6 by black. If black tries to capture the pawn on d4, white usually castles in this position. Even playing queen b3 is a fine move. But I would say after a short castle, let's take a sample move like d into c3. Again capturing a pawn. And here comes queen to b3, hitting the f7 pawn. You cannot play knight h6 to defend the pawn because of bishop into h6. And after gh6, bishop into f7, I would say black is in a huge amount of trouble. So queen to f6 is kind of the fourth move, protecting the pawn on f7. And now comes bishop g5, queen b6, queen g6, and now knight into c3. And you can already sense that white all pieces are developed compared to the black pieces, which are like the bishop and the rook, the knight and the rook. Even the king is still in the center, which actually gives white a huge amount of attacking chances. And I would say that practically it's nearly impossible to play with the black side, unless and until you are an engine or you are already well versed with the theory. So basically, Wesley didn't decide to capture the pawn on d4, and he went for the move d6, trying to play a more solid structure. And here we have queen b3. If white tries to capture, we simply have d5. White can go for this queen to 8, but after knight into d8. If king into, you lose the f7 pawn basically. So basically after knight into d8, we have knight into e5, knight to f6, and I would say like this position is fine for both the sides, but basically white pawn on c3 is an isolated pawn, a2 is isolated pawn. Material-wise, the position is equal, which actually gives slight advantage to black, or even an equal position perhaps. So basically white lost all its advantage. So that's the reason capturing the pawn is not a good idea. And here Vidit decides to go for playing queen b3, the main idea in Ivan's gambit. Hitting the pawn on f7, queen to d7, defending the f7 pawn. If you try to play something like queen to f6, now d5 is actually a very strong move. After knight e7, queen f4 check, and you lose the bishop. So that's the idea. You have to play queen to d7, so that after d5 you can play knight e7 and there are no more checks. So after queen d7, we have short castle by Vidit, bishop to b6, knight to d2, and here we have knight to a5. If black tries to capture the pawn, we have c into d4. If knight into d4, here like white can continue with queen c3 hitting the knight, and after knight into f3 check, knight into f3. This position is slightly better for black after knight f6, but I believe after bishop g5, like black have to actually castle in this position, giving up this thing. So basically the king becomes terribly weak. So I think practically it's very like until and unless you know the theory, it's very hard to play like the open king with the open king. Yeah. So that's the reason Wesley didn't decide to go for capturing the pawn, and here we have knight to a5, hitting the queen and the bishop. Queen c2 takes checks. So basically Wesley wants to simplify the position as much as possible because he's already a pawn up. So why not trade as many pieces as possible? So after knight into c4, we have queen to c6, hitting the knight. Knight into b6 by Vidit, a into b6, and now we have d into e5. D into e5, knight into e5. So basically now white has successfully equalized in the material wise. But the main problems I would say for white here is the a2 pawn is isolated and the c3 pawn is isolated. But in the exchange, white king is much safer than the black king. Black king is still in the center. The queen is attacked. And yeah, this is what white is having, which actually makes the position equal. We are having queen f4 in the game, asking for a queen trade, because if with it trades the queen, it is only healthy for Wesley now, because now there could be no more attacks in the for the king because the queens have been traded, and now I was already prefer black in this position. So that's the reason we have queen d3, keeping the queens on the board. Knight to e7, preparing to short castle. Queen to g3, hitting the pawn on g7. Short castle still, and here we have rook b1 developing the rook and also protecting the e4 pawn from the queen. Bishop to e6, Wesley simply developing the bishop. H4 by Vidit, and now here's Vidit decides to go all in by playing h4, and the idea could be to play h5, h6. So we have king h8, h5 by Vidit, and here simply h6 by Wesley. A very practical approach, stopping this h6 pawn at one, because once white plays h6, black have to play g6, which actually makes black dark squares very weak, and as black is not having the dark square bishop, white is having the dark square bishop, which will already give a huge amount of control to white. So after h5, h6 was kind of necessary move. Bishop to f4, developing the bishop. Rook to a5. Now there is a point: can black capture the pawn on e2 in this position? You can definitely capture the pawn actually in this position with the bishop, but the main thing you're going to face here is like you can't move the bishop now because the queen is attacked. And like if you want to move the bishop, you first need to move the queen and then you need to move the bishop. So basically it is going to take a huge amount of time, and as white pieces are all very well developed, it's a very bad idea to be a pawn grabber to capture the a2 pawn. And the thing is, the a2 pawn is a long-term weakness. You can capture the pawn whenever you want, so it's better to keep the pawn on a2 now, for now, and you can capture the pawn later. So after bishop f4, we have rook to a5 by Wesley. The idea could be to play rook a8, putting more pressure on the pawn on a2. And also perhaps the idea could be to putting some pressure on the knight on e5, followed by the pawn on h5. So rook to d1 by Vidit, just leaving the pawn on a2. He doesn't care about it. So Wesley goes and capture the pawn on a2. Knight to f3. Perhaps the idea is to capture the pawn on c7, and there could be a nice outpost for the knight on d4, hitting the bishop, and definitely the d4 square looks a very good square for the knight. Here we simply have rook into h5. Wesley chops off the pawn on h5. Bishop into c7 by Vidit. Knight to g6. Bishop into b6. King to h7. Bishop to d4. Keeping the position as compact as possible. the knight cannot move because there is a mate hanging on g7. So rook to e8, rook to a1, queen to c4, rook to a7, hitting the pawn on b7. Here comes queen to c6. If black tries to push the pawn to b5, it's still a fine move, but I would say it actually puts some pressure on the pawn on f7. So I think perhaps that's what Wesley was not liking, and he went for defending the pawn with the queen and basically not giving an open file to the rook. And after queen c6, we have rook a1, with it coming back with the rook, bishop to d7, putting some pressure on the pawn on e4 now, knight to d2, protecting the pawn, rook to g5, hitting the queen and the pawn, queen to h2, and now f5 by Wesley. So Wesley going in for the attack, and it looks like the things are getting heated up. f5. In the game, we have rook to a5. If white tries to capture the pawn now there's a nice move, I would say. Okay, currently the knight is attacked. Okay, so there is a move like knight f4. I was thinking to ask you this question, like what can black pen play, but still fine. Knight to f4 is a nice move. Triple attack on the pawn on g2. So basically, the queen cannot capture the free knight because it's a mate. And now the pawn is simply attacked twice. So if you even try to play something like g3, now knight e2 check, and if you try to play king u1, knight into d4, pawn into d4, queen to c3, and black is actually very well two better, I would say, because the king is extremely weak. Bishop b5 is coming up, so I would say it's a very danger time for the white king, and even the knight is hanging on e2. So you have to capture it, but after rook into e2, white loses an exchange and black is winning. So that's the reason it cannot go for capturing the pawn on f5 in this position. So we have rook to a5 by Vidit, putting some pressure on the pawn on rook. Here we have b5 by Wesley. Now very nice move, I would say, by Wesley, stopping this rooks from taking this open 5th rank. And rook to a7 now. As I told you that once black played the move b5, now the 7th rank is opened up. So we simply went with rook a7, pawn takes, and now going to c7 by Vidit. Rook to c7 would have been a much better move, hitting the queen and the bishop. And after a move like, let's say, the best move in this position is to actually play e3. Can you believe it? E3 is the best move. And basically, the point is, if you try to capture the queen, e into d2 wins for black. It's made in 9. Can you believe it? Like, the rook is simply attacked. So basically, if you cannot capture the rook because black will make a queen, and it would be a mate. So if you try to play something like rook f1, now comes rook e1. Sorry, rook e1. And now you cannot stop this promotion square. And if you try to capture the rook, it's a mate. I can even capture the rook with a rook, and I can still mate it. That's the thing. And if you try to play rook e1, capturing the pawn, now rook e1, and it's a sure mate. So actually, everything is falling apart. So actually, after e3, white needs to capture rook into e3, rook into e3, f into e3, rook into g2 check, queen into g2, queen into okay, now capturing the queen is wrong. Now queen into c7, and the position is slightly better for black because black is a pawn material wise, and black is having a slight advantage in the position. But this could have been the best for white because thinking e3 is nearly requires a huge amount of calculation. But queen to c7 was played by Vidit, which was a bad move. And here's your moment. Try to pause the video and try to find the best move for black in this position. What are you going to play if you are in Wesley's shoes? Wesley was not able to find this move. Can you find it? Okay, so all those who have came up with the move e3. Okay, definitely you got a hint. You already got to know that this move is coming up. So yeah, all those who have able to find this move, congratulations. e3 is a brilliant move. The basic point is black is now simply threatening mate in 1 on g2. So you cannot capture the bishop because it's mate in 1. And if you try to capture the queen, which is actually the best move, here comes e to d2 now. And again, if you try to capture the rook, now comes g1 queen, king move, rook h5 check, king move, queen g4, and the game is over for white. So the rook g1 is the best move for white, and now comes rook e1 check, And after king h2, you can't capture the rook as I told you because black will make a queen. So you have to play king h2, and now comes rook into d1, and this position is -2 for black. Can you believe it? The basic point here is if white tries to, for example, capture the bishop, now comes rook h1 check. You have to capture it, and now comes rook h5 check. And you won't believe it, but if you try to play king g1, it's a mate. So you have to play queen to h3, giving up the queen basically, and now you have to play this position, which is completely losing for white. So like this was the move. If Wesley would have found it, it would be epic. And after e3, for example, if like you have to capture it, yeah, because it's a mate hanging on g2. So if Wesley would have found it, he definitely would have won the game. But as I told you, that founding e3 is extremely hard. So he went for the move knight to f8, defending the bishop. Queen into c6, bishop into c6, bishop e3 hitting the rook. Rook move, rook to c7 hitting the bishop. Bishop to d7, rook to a1, knight to e6, rook to b7. Now, I don't know what's happening, but basically the rook was attacked. So basically, move the rook to e3, putting some pressure on the bishop and the knight and the pawn. Rook to a7, bishop to c6, hitting the rook. Rook to e7, we have a rook trade, bishop to d5. The position is roughly equal because of the bishop pair, but opposite color bishop. Here we have knight into e4, king to g6. If you try to capture the knight, here we have the rook checks, and the position is still fine because like the material by the position is equal. It's an opposite color bishop, which makes the game 100% good. We have king g6, so knight to d6 takes checks. And after a couple of moves, we have this position. And on the move number 47, as there is nothing happening in the position, both the sides are having the opposite color bishop, 2 pawns each. Both players agreed to a draw. So I hope that you guys have liked the video, the game basically. The reason I showed you this game because of this advanced Gambit. Even in top class, in super GM levels, Grandmasters still play it, and it is fun to watch the games, yeah? So this was the first game that I have discussed from the 8th round of the Tata Steel Rapid 2022. Now we are going to discuss the second game between Arjun and Hikaru Nakamura versus Arjun and Legacy from the 8th round itself. So let's check it out. So now we are going to discuss the game between Hikaru Nakamura versus Arjun and Legacy. And this game is from the 8th round, and Hikaru Nakamura starts out the game with 1 knight f3, d5, e3. And the reason many players actually go for starts out the game with a knight f3 is because you can actually transpose the game any opening you want by playing knight f3, because mostly every opening knight f3 move is a very necessary and a very common move. Because like you can play d4, c4, you have queen gambit, you can play e4, you have the standard Google piano or Roy Lopez, whatever you want. You can even play the King's Indian attack in this position like this. You can play the Reti like this something, or you can even play the English. So there are basically you can play anything with the move of knight f3. Yeah, that's the reason knight f3 is a very standard move. We have d5 by Arjun, e3, knight f6, and now we have c4, the ready opening, e6, and now knight c3. Basically a ready opening, I would say English opening, because c4 is an English opening. So anything you can call it. Knight to c3 was put in the game, bishop d6. Arjun being way solid as possible, playing d5, e6, knight f6, bishop d6, a very solid structure. d4 by Hikaru Nakamura, and now we have b6 by Arjun. He wants to capture the, like for example, if white tries to play bishop e2, I believe he wants to capture the pawn, bishop into c4, and now bishop b7, opening up the bishop and also wasting a move for white by playing bishop e2, bishop c4. So this is an idea, and so generally after b6, white captures the pawn on d5. It's a very standard way of playing the chess. Into d5, bishop d3, short castle, bishop to d2 by Hikaru Nakamura. And I would say like there are many players who actually suffer from or they do not have any idea how to play from the black side if white tries to play Queen's Gambit. Like they do play b6, but now most players decides to play a move like bishop b7. But guys, after playing bishop b7, you are simply putting your bishop as like behind your pawn, which actually simply makes your bishop bad. So you can learn from this game by looking at the game of Arjun. You can see how he played it. After bishop d2, and went for the move first, c5. Keeping the ideas of bishop open, he can put the bishop on b7 anytime he wants. He can even put the bishop on a6, trying to trade off the bishops, and even putting the bishop on e6 on g4 can be an idea. So you're keeping the option open, trying to open up the center by playing c5. d5 by Nakamura, b into c5. Now basically black is having 2 pawns in the center, and black is actually slightly better in this position actually, because he have already castled. The position is open. He's having a much more control in the center, which actually gives him a slight more better position compared to the black. But I would say at the same time the d pawn and the c pawn can be a weakness in the future. But for now it's fine. Short castle by Nakamura, knight to c6, h3, stopping this bishop to g4 ideas, which can really make Hikaru Nakamura very uncomfortable. h3, h6 by Arjun, rook to c1, bishop to e6. So basically, whenever you have a pawn on d5 and the pawn on f7, and you do not have any pawn on e5 to defend the pawn on d5, like playing e6, the bishop works as a pawn by playing bishop e6, and it is a very common move. You can actually play in this in every position, I would say, which makes the position very stable. Because in the future, even if white knight captures the pawn, it captures the bishop, you can simply capture the bishop back with a pawn, which actually makes your pawn structure very stable. So it's a very good idea to put the bishop on e6. I have some like more than 1,000 games where black actually puts his bishop to e6, protecting the pawn on d5, and it's a very stable opening and very solid structure, I would say, from the black side. So after bishop e6, we have knight to e2, opening up the rook's file, knight to e4, centralizing the knight, and here we have a3. If white tries to capture the knight, d into e4, hitting the knight, and here the knight have to move. Like for example, the best move can be to play knight f to d4 is a good move. If you try to capture with the pawn, now you lose the knight. And though after d3, black is still better, but yeah, that's the reason white didn't went for capturing the knight. Here we have a3 in the position. Perhaps the idea could be to play b4, removing the c pawn, which makes the d pawn an isolated pawn and also a weak pawn. So going to b6, stopping this b4 ideas, perhaps knight to c3, asking for a knight trade. Here we have knight into d2. Basically, Arjun went for capturing the bishop. The reason is he first removed white's bishop pair, which could be very dangerous, and now he's having the bishop. c4 now, putting the pawns on the light square, which limits the white's light square bishop to b1. A very nice move, keeping the bishop open, because if you try to play bishop e2 in this position, you are basically making your bishop bad, because the bishop is not doing anything. You can play bishop b1. Idea could be the queen to threatening a mate in 1 on h7. So rook to d1, rook to d1, rook to d8, rook to b1, and now we have rook b7. Hitting the pawn twice on the b2 pawn, knight to a4, hitting the queen and the pawn, defending also the pawn, queen to b7, bishop to c2, defending the bishop, defending the knight, queen to e7, rook to b1. The idea could be to play b3 and trying to open up the b file, because the b3 is currently a weak pawn. So queen to f6 now, basically a very nice maneuvering by Arjun, trying to play queen e7, queen f6, and definitely an idea. The idea for black in this position is to capture the pawn on h3, because after take you capture the knight. So definitely Nakamura saw it and he played the move queen e2, defending the knight. g6 now, basically limiting their white square bishops. Rook to d2, king g7, queen to d1. So Nakamura wants to put some huge amount of pressure on the pawn on d5. Bishop to c7, knight to c5, bishop to c8, keeping both the bishops. And I actually like this how black Arjun put his bishop. Both the bishops are extremely open, which looks at the king. It actually looks very dangerous for white now. But nothing's happening. b4 by Hikaru Nakamura, opening upon the queen side, knight to e5. If you try to end passing this position, bishop into b3, and this will only help white, because now the pawn on d5 is weak, which will give some good chances to white to come back into the game. b4, keeping the pawn structure like this and playing knight to e5. Knight to e1. If you try to capture the knight, I believe after queen into e5, white is going to be in huge amount of trouble now, because of the g3 you even lose the h3 pawn, and I would say g3 is kind of forced move, because queen is coming on h2, and you can't even play a move like f4 because you lose the e3 pawn and the game is over. That's the reason knight to d1, queen to d6, and I believe the idea is to move the knight and threat this knight queen h2. So we have knight f4. So basically perhaps Hikaru Nakamura must have saw everything and nothing is happening. He can play something like he can't play something like check because of knight into f3. Knight covers the h2 square. If you try to play something like knight to d3, knight f3 is the best. If you try to capture the knight now queen h2 check this. C here, c takes, knight takes. D4 is winning for black. I don't know how, but it's winning. Okay. So if I buy Arjun a very fine move, the making the like basically having a pawn trade which would eventually make a weak pawn on the queen side, b5, and here we have bishop e6. You can't capture the pawn here because of b6, and after bishop here we have rook a1 hitting the queen. The queen has to move, rook b1, and it could be a draw. Okay, so you have bishop e6 first defending the pawn, and now idea is to capture the pawn on a3. f4 hitting the knight, knight goes back, knight to f8. Now we have queen into a3 capturing the pawn. Arjun is already better in this position. He's a pawn up, he's having a good position, and here a couple of moves were played. Rook to a8. Black wants to push his a past pawn because he's a pawn up. Why wouldn't he do it? So now we have f5 by Hikaru. Perhaps now he is like he must be thinking that he's losing now. So he tried to do something extraordinary. He went for attacking on the trying to open up the king side by playing f5, g to f5 now, which is the best move for knight e2, bishop to d7, knight here centralizing the knight and pushing up the pawn. The best move in this position could be to play queen to f6, and I believe the idea could be to play rook to e8, putting some pressure over here. And yeah, you can even think of a move like f4 after rook e8, and it looks a fine move. But he went for the move first f4, and now we have pawn push, e4 on time, rook e8, rook e2, pawn takes, bishop takes, rook d8, rook takes pawn now, queen to f6, and I believe the material wise the position is still even now. And still black is still having an edge. We have rook to a3, a6 now, bishop to c8 hitting the rook, queen to a1 by Nakamura, king to g8. If you try to capture the rook now comes knight to f5 check, and you have to play king g6 or else you lose the queen like this. King g6, and the position is still a draw, but it looks black is living on the edge. That's the very obvious reasons Arjun didn't went for capturing the rook. He went for the move king g8, a very safe approach. Knight c6, having the queen trade, rook to d6. So basically, now a couple of moves were played in the game, because the video's length is already too high, so I don't want to make the video too lengthy. So I'm coming to the end part now. Knight to d6 was played in the game. So c2 has happened in this position, and the best way for white to continue in this position is to play knight into h6. Giving a check, your opponent cannot go here because it's a mate in 1. Bishop defends the rook, it's a mate, okay? So you have to play king f8, rook f7 check, king e8, and here the best move is you can play bishop g7, or I would say even capturing is a bad move, but you can play bishop g6, okay? So basically if black tries to make a queen, you can play rook c7 check, and you can capture the queen. And here the best move is to play king d8, removing the king from this diagonal, and now bishop into c2 now. After rook into c2, playing knight f5, and this position is still playable. It's very hard for black to win this position, because I believe once the pawn on f4 is exchanged, it is going to be very hard for black to win this game. But what happened in the game is very shocking. After c2, Nakamura played the move knight to d6, and guess what? c1 queen. Arjun simply made a queen. Bishop check was played in the game, but after king h8, Hikaru Nakamura resigned the game because there is no continuation. I don't know what he missed. Perhaps he missed out that after knight f7. Check, it's not a mate. Black can capture the bishop as the knight is in between of the rook. Perhaps he missed that, I don't know. Or perhaps he missed this promotion square. I'm like 100% sure he must have missed something, because he's not a idiot or something that he would play moves like 90 defense. Okay, so yeah, like basically one move cost everything for Nakamura, and I believe that if he would have drawn this game, perhaps I'm going to discuss the final rankings now. Perhaps he could have scored much better what he has achieved now. So, but yeah, very fantastic game, I would say. The reason I wanted to show you this game, that even in the end, one move can change everything. Okay, one move can change everything. Or you miss one move, the game is over. So these were the two interesting game, and after the successfully the tournament have been completed of the rapid section, and after the total, I believe total 9 rounds were played in the game in the tournament. And after 9 rounds, in the first place we have Nihal Sarin with the 6.5 points, Arjun Erigaisi with 6 points, and from the third to the 7th place, all the players are having 4.5 points. In the third position, we have Vidit Gujarati with 4.5 points, having the highest bookers. In the fourth place, we have Hikaru Nakamura. As I've said, even if he draw the one game and if he won 5 points, then he would have came third. But okay, that's fine. 4.5. In the fifth place, we have another pickup Satarov with 4.5 points. Gokesh on the sixth position with 4.5 points. Shakir Mamedyarov on the 7th place, 4.5 points. Wesley Sob on the 8th points, having 4 points. Param Maksudlu on the 9th place, having 4 points. And on the 10th place, last but not the least, Sethuraman SP with 2 points. So these were the final rankings. And I hope that you guys have liked the 2 games of Vidit versus Wesley and Nakamura versus Arjun Erigaisi. If you did, then make sure to like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new to our channel, and make sure to share this video with everyone. And I'm going to come up with this interesting videos like this because the Blitz section is still remaining. I'm going to discuss that game. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to see you soon. Till then, stay tuned and keep watching OneShot Chess.